In this video, I'm going to show you the 5 types of creators who actually use 360 cameras in their content with real examples. But first, let me explain why I even started looking. You see, when I first got my hands on the Insta360 X5 and the DJI Osmo 360, I was blown away by what they could do. You capture everything around you, you get unlimited reframing options in post, and you can pull off some crazy angles that just aren't possible with a normal camera. But after a while, I just stopped using them. Things like tiny planet shots were fun at first, but they're difficult to use in your regular content. So most of the time, you just end up using it like a traditional camera. And that's when you really start to feel the downsides. The files are massive, you have to reframe and process every single clip, and the moment you crop into a more natural focal length, the image quality takes a noticeable hit. So in most situations, a normal camera is just faster, simpler, and gives you better results with way less effort. And in these last few months, the only time I've really used mine is for the occasional backpack POV shot to put in my videos. And that made me wonder, who's actually using these things? Because outside of all the hyped up promotional footage, I almost never see 360 style shots in the content I consume. No tiny planets, no invisible selfie stick shots, just creators using standard tripod setups or pointing and shooting the old-fashioned way. So I decided to find out. I went through a ton of YouTube categories looking for creators who were actually using 360 cameras as part of their normal workflow and not just showing off the camera itself or doing sponsored content. And what I found is that 360 cameras still aren't very widely used, but they do keep showing up in a few very specific niches. Now, a quick disclaimer before I jump into those, I'm strictly looking at who's using 360 cameras for content creation, so I'm skipping over professional uses like real estate virtual tours, or just using them to capture personal memories in a more immersive format. Let's start with the most obvious one, extreme sports. Channels like Red Bull are now using them extensively for things like skiing, snowboarding, skydiving, basically anything where the action is fast, unpredictable, and happening all around you. And many individual creators are using them too, because that reframing ability becomes a real advantage when you're just too engaged in the activity itself to worry about framing a shot, unlike more relaxed shooting scenarios where it's very easy to frame as you go. Plus, reframing isn't as much of a pain here, since you're usually dealing with short bursts of action as opposed to long stretches of footage. Travel and adventure vlogs are where I actually expected 360 cameras to be everywhere, but surprisingly, very few creators were using them handheld on a selfie stick the way I thought they would. It took me a while to even find examples of this, but when it's done well, it can really make a positive difference to the video like they do here. Instead, most travel vloggers are still primarily using traditional action or mirrorless cameras. Meanwhile, for more polished and cinematic travel vlogs, I saw many drones getting used for third-person and establishing shots. But where 360 cameras did consistently show up was as a mounted camera for more raw and candid adventure vlogs such as motovlogging, bikepacking, and kayaking. And in these cases, it's almost never the main camera, it's mainly used for B-roll, while most of the final footage still comes from a normal camera. Now the next one's a bit harder to label clearly, so I'm just calling it IRL content, but it might actually be one of the biggest use cases for 360 cameras and the one I see growing the most. What I'm talking about is content where creators are doing something high energy and unpredictable in urban environments, often involving interactions with strangers, and they need to be capturing everything around them at any given moment. 360 cameras are perfect for this because they catch reactions a cameraman would completely miss, and there's also the fact that the camera isn't visibly pointed at anyone, it's often on a stick or mounted to the backpack, so people tend to act more naturally around it, which leads to more genuine interactions. Now, while those cool looking 360 shots can be hard to weave into regular content, there are creators who lean fully into that visual spectacle. And this is where 360 cameras can really shine. There's a whole bunch of creators who rely on camera trickery and creative techniques to make visually striking shorts or montages, the kind of content that grabs attention and gets shared mostly because of how cool it looks. And the key difference here is the intent. Most of the time, cameras are just a tool to tell a story, but in this case, the camera and what the person behind it can do with it kind of becomes the story. This last category is one that truly maxes out a 360 camera's potential, capturing content that viewers can explore themselves. This isn't flat, reframed footage, it's about uploading the full 360 feed and letting the viewer look around in real time. YouTube supports this natively, so whether you're on your phone or your desktop, or even a VR headset, you can pan around and control the perspective yourself. And while it's still pretty niche, there are some surprisingly big channels doing things like virtual city tours or theme park walkthroughs that pull in millions of views. And this is an area I can see growing over time as more people discover it and as 360 cameras get better and feel even more immersive. So those were the 5 main use cases where I found 360 cameras actually being used. And let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed, because I'm sure there are given just how vast YouTube and other video sharing platforms are. So I think the key takeaway is this: for most creators, 360 cameras are used as a secondary camera, a tool used for specific shots and not something you build your entire workflow around. They're almost never a do-it-all camera like they're sometimes marketed as. And that makes sense because in most cases, a normal camera is just less friction. The image quality is going to be better, and you don't have to jump through the extra hoops that come with 360 cameras. Now, companies like Insta360 are starting to close the gap with things like InstaFrame, which give you a ready-to-use flat video, but for regular shots, a normal camera is always going to be easier to use. Having said all of that, we've got to keep in mind that there's always a delay before creators fully adopt a completely new way of shooting, and the image quality is improving with each generation. So I do think we'll start seeing more and more 360 cameras going forward, and I'm definitely excited about incorporating them more in my own videos. But as things stand, 360 cameras definitely seem like more of a luxury than an essential, and even among those who do use them, it's often a case of having one recording just in case, with only a small fraction of what it captures actually making the final cut.